Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. All right, good morning. Welcome to episode 420. 420? Oh no. Too bad I haven't done the 420 proper since like high school. But welcome. Happy Saturday. I'm going to be working on let's see which page. 157. Of Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, which is a graphic novel that I'm working on for Turner Publishing, written by Lavender Vroman and illustrated by myself. And we're going to be carving away at this monster comic. And I might play a little bit of a preview of... I tracked a little bit of music this morning. Been feeling inspired. I've been staving off guitar acquisition syndrome bravely. I've been looking at... I'm curious about it. Anyhow. There's too many guitars, guys. There's too many guitars in the world that need homes. There's guitars out there, guys, that need homes that I constantly look at. But I have way too many guitars. I'm blessed with too many guitars, but I love them. Anyhow, this isn't a guitar stream. This is a art stream. You're going to hear a lot in the background because there are kiddos that are playing and hanging out, which makes sense. It's a Saturday. And we're going to work on some comics. And welcome to the new thing. By the way, I have new internet. So if this stream is not coming through in pure clarity, this is no longer an internet issue. It would be a my computer issue. So let me know. But it should be pretty smooth. We have ditched Spectrum. I'm not a fan of Spectrum. We've had to have Spectrum for about 10 years. I've always complained about this. I feel like anti-monopoly laws are really good. For a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is, when you have a service that's a necessary service and it has a monopoly in a certain area, they can offer like horrible service. And Spectrum has always sucked, like since day one of me getting it. But the problem is, in my area, they had a complete monopoly. And prior to that, everywhere my wife and I have lived, we've had Verizon like Fios, which was amazing. It was like fiber optic, rarely got interrupted, rarely had any issues. But in the Antelope Valley, that wasn't an option because there were no fiber optic cables. Like the infrastructure for it didn't exist. And then there's really no competitors for the internet. So we were just kind of stuck with Spectrum, which, by the way, a lot of you guys, especially if you're out in like the rural, that's a word that I cannot pronounce. Anytime I say it, I'm reminded that I can't say it. Rural. It just sounds weird. How do you pronounce rural? Am I pronouncing that wrong? Let me know. Oh, we got Scott in the chat. Scott, if you want to hop in, feel free. Gary as well. I know you guys are probably doing your Saturday stuff, but if you do want to hop in, So there's a couple things. What have I been up to today? So I'm working on this page. I tracked a little bit of music because while I'm feeling guitar acquisition syndrome, it makes me realize I should appreciate the many guitars that I have. And so I rocked my 7-string and recorded a little track this morning. And I'm getting back on the horse. It's been like 6 months probably. I've been recording every day, like one day every week with no saboteurs. And so that's always cooking. But those are much more kind of time-consuming albums where my friend Josh and I are really exploring and pushing the limits. But I did like the habit of kind of daily showing up and just recording for like 10 minutes. And I don't want to lose that. So, Gary said it makes me think of the 30 Rock bit about the in-universe movie, The Rural Jury, in which nobody can understand. That was actually a pretty well-written show. 30 Rock wasn't bad. My favorite 30 Rock bit is Werewolf Bar Mitzvah. That's legendary in my mind. Just the Werewolf Bar Mitzvah song made it for me. And then I think there's that bit where she's like, "You're wearing a suit," and he's like, "Well, why wouldn't I be?" And it was like just him relaxing at home, like in a suit. Those are like the two bits that are the funniest. All right, so we're gonna get into streaming. Streaming art. So let me get to my art screen. Just so you guys know, if you haven't noticed the new kind of border and stuff. Again, if there's blurriness or anything like that, let me know. There shouldn't be. It should be crisp, beautiful clarity, hopefully, with our internet. So, super chats, any amount over $1, I'll answer your question or touch on your topic following TOS. And I'm working live on graphic novel pages. So, my goal today is to hopefully hit 5 super chats. I'm being ambitious. But if you guys want to help me, I'm going to aim to get there in an hour. But let's get into making art and kind of, talking art. This is where we're at on the page. I have to shade the rest of this page. I did a little bit of shading yesterday. I was just watching a lot of videos on a guitar that I'm particularly interested in. This is the thing. There's a million kinds of guitars, right? But I've always been kind of curious. Okay, there's a certain guitar called a PRS that I've always been curious about. I am not a fan of John Mayer. And so, he's an amazing guitarist, but I'm just not... I've never been the guy who was putting Your Body is a Wonderland on my playlist. I always felt like John Mayer was kind of corny. And even John Mayer's like vibe as a guitarist, like he I think recently played with the Grateful Dead, and I'm one of those guys like never was really a big Deadhead. Like sorry to those out there who are, big Jerry Garcia fans. And it's surprising to a lot of people, especially when I was a kid, if people came to my house and they found out I wasn't a Jerry Garcia fan, they'd always be a little weirded out because my dad kind of looked like Jerry Garcia. He had the same hair, kind of similar beard. He just was a Jerry Garcia looking dude. And so the idea to a lot of people that it might come as a shock, but not a big Deadhead. Again, phenomenal musicians, just not my vibe, right? Anyhow, John Mayer's kind of in that same camp where, it's, to me, there's, it's like a similar thing to my Thomas Kinkade thing. Not a big Thomas Kinkade fan. Very talented artist. Just, not my jam. There's something kind of soulless about those cottages to me. And I like a little soul in my art or music, So I feel like kind of the same with John Mayer. If you're a big John Mayer fan, I'm sorry. But I will say, John Mayer put out a guitar with PRS. PRS has always been in a category of guitars that I've never really been interested in. They're crazy expensive, very overpriced, but they're overpriced for a reason, right? They're like perfection in a guitar. But the thing is, most people I know in my circle kind of don't like the perfection of the guitar. Like it's kind of like you know what it is? It's like a vector line. This is kind of the topic I want to bring up. I'm not just about guitars, but about too clean or too perfect. I think there's a line in art where when you get so generic and perfect with, like, there is a point of being too good. I don't know if that makes sense. And I don't think it's like that you can't do stunning, amazing work. It's just there's a look that's like too crisp, too clean. And to me, that's like something I want to avoid like the plague. Like, I like having clean, nice artwork, but I don't want to get rid of all imperfections to the point where it looks kind of mechanical, especially in the day and age where, you know, we're faced with, you know, AI and stuff like that. I think that let me put it this way. There's a point in like the 1980s, a lot of people may not remember, where you know, synthesizers were like, they're like the same conversation that's happening with AI and art was happening with synthesizers and digital music, where, you know, by the early 90s, before grunge kind of broke, you had a lot of like guitar hero bands, you know, that were like really shreddy. And I would argue a lot of like hair metal was kind of running into that territory of like, it's just too polished and too produced. And it's like, you know, you'd have like guitar noises that didn't sound imperfect at all. And at the same time, like, you had a conversation kind of going, especially like before all hair bands even blew up. It's like the mid 80s to late 80s. There was a big conversation about synthesizers just replacing all, like, people wouldn't be using. The prediction of a lot of people was that, like, by the late 90s, early 2000s, traditional rock and roll would be phased out by digital, right? Didn't happen. Part of why it didn't happen is, like, it turns out people really like the sound of guitar. It, like, you can make, probably you can synthesize or sample like a perfect chord, right? But there's a point where, like, even synthetic guitars just sound synthetic. Now, don't get me wrong, AI does a pretty clean job of interpreting, making guitar sounding stuff. But I think there is like there's an uncanny valley kind of thing that happens like with sound, where something about it sounds like too produced or too good. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyhow, this ties into the PRS conversation. So there's this guitar brand called PRS. And by the way, while I'm working on this, if there's a topic, if you're like, oh, don't talk about guitars, super chat and tell me a topic that you want me to hit on. Or just, you know, mention it in the chats. But my point is, in the world of guitars, like, PRS was like definitely in that category of, they were beautiful guitars, like almost perfect guitars. The setup was insane on them, and they've had a big influence on guitars that I like, being set up better, like necks, like neck profiles. Like, back in the day, if you got a PRS, it was like the neck was unlike anything else. A good example of that that was like a guitar I was probably a little more interested in, but still had a similar, I would say, like flaw, is Music Man. Like Music Man would make these basses that had like a rawness to them, but quite often like they'd have these guitars where the neck was so worked and so buttery and easy to play that a lot of guitarists didn't even like it because it was like, well, this is like too good. Like it kind of misses some of the character of like a Strat or a Telecaster or like a Les Paul, where half the appeal of a Les Paul and the humbuckers in a Les Paul is that they are not perfect. Like they're warm and kind of they have like a rawness to them, right? That you just can't you can't kind of fake with like a overly tuned, overly perfect thing. There's like personality to it. It's kind of like traditionally inking where there's little splatters or mistakes that are hard to fake digitally. Anyhow, point being, PRS was that company. So back in like the late 80s, early 90s, like PRS was putting out these like shredder guitars that like virtuosos who would be, playing, they'd have all their, scales like perfectly memorized, and they're hitting these like perfect hammer-ons and shredding. Which, by the way, the shreddy thing is definitely back, in fashion. And it's something I can't do as a guitarist. So it's not like I look at like shreddy shred stuff and go like, wow, that sucks. It's just that generally, save for some bands, like I've never been a guy who's like really particularly like listening to shreddy stuff and going, yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a couple shreddy bands, but I feel like even Zeppelin, when they get shreddy, it's like there's still like a rawness and a slightly out of tuneness, like a primitive thing about it that I think is really fun. And I wouldn't want to have like that, but like more perfect as music, because I feel like half the joy of even a Zeppelin song is like the imperfections and the rawness of it. So anyhow, point being, PRSs, at least in my circles of guitar people, people I knew bought guitars, would look at these PRSs and be like, yeah, they're just too clean. Like the clean tones on them were like too good. Like there was no warmth or character to it. It was just like stale. It was like so good. And I think it's very similar to like a vector line, like a perfect vector line. If you're using the pen tool in Illustrator, is like, it's just a perfectly solid line. And there's no thick and thin. It's just perfect. And weirdly, Illustrator's up until Illustrator came out, illustrators would almost aim for that. Like they'd aim for like this perfection, airbrush artists in the 80s used to aim for like perfection in rendering and stuff. And then it became possible to actually do it perfect. And then a lot of people were like, well, this is a little too generic for me. Now, keep in mind, my favorite artist is Chris Ware, and he has like a meticulously almost perfect line. But I think what makes Ware interesting is the fact that it's hand done, and there are those little, even with Ware, even with like how steady and perfect his hand is, there's a rawness even in Ware stuff that's like from the actual hand done thing. Anyhow, that's very much how I feel about guitars too. So anyhow, this is a long story, but that's why we're here, right? We're working on art and just kind of shooting the breeze. So PRS is like, has been for a long time, just kind of a brand that I would cast aside as like, well, that's for shredders, right? Or for like really old dentists who collect guitars, right? There's a joke, the rock star dentist is probably the biggest purveyor of music buying, like, because like the costs of a PRS were like, back in the day, and even now are like, $3,000 to $5,000 you're going to drop for like one of these guitars, right? Anyhow, but John Mayer put out a guitar that was like, for months on end, the news in the music world was that it was the Strat killer. So for those of you who don't know guitars, like Stratocaster is going to be most likely, if you're thinking of an electric guitar, you're thinking of either a Les Paul or a Stratocaster, maybe a Telecaster. Those are your three heavy-hitting legacy guitars that were designed in the 1950s, and basically the design was so solid, and kind of perfected by the 1960s for all three of these models of guitars, that I guess you could throw in a fourth, which is the Gibson SG. But those like four shapes are pretty much like still to this day, like the best guitars. Like, and a lot of people argue that they kind of hit their perfection at like in the 1960s, and there have been various takes on it or riffs on these guitar shapes and styles. But basically, in the electric guitar world, from the inception of the electric guitar, these are like still considered like the essential guitars. Like if you were talking to somebody who's a guitar nerd about like what basic guitars you should own, they would tell like a Telecaster, a Stratocaster, a Les Paul, or an SG. Like these are just generally, and if they gave you a different one, even PRS was early on just kind of like a really perfect version of like a Les Paul, like a lot of them, or like a Super Strat. Like they're just playing off of these main guitars. Anyhow, so the Stratocaster, that's like, made infamous by, Jimi Hendrix, right? And Eric Clapton. Like the Stratocaster is like a classic electric guitar that's really hard to, it's the guitar I learned on was a Stratocaster. It wasn't a Fender Stratocaster. It was like a Squier Stratocaster. But, Squier's like the cheap off-brand version of Fender. Anyhow, so Squire's like the Costco version of the whiskey you like, like, which by the way, Squires have gotten better and better. But anyhow, my point is, the Stratocaster is just like a staple guitar. And then a couple years ago, well, quite a few years ago, John Mayer worked with PRS to basically make a Stratocaster that was modern, modernized, had a more comfortable neck, but had pickup sounds that would hopefully kind of create the chime and vibe of like a 1959 or 1960 Stratocaster. And I believe actually they were aiming specifically to replicate like a 62 Strat. Anyhow, so Mayer puts this thing out. He works with PRS, like it's like a signature model. And well, I guess John Mayer is very popular in the guitar world, which again I can understand because he's a killer guitarist. I'm not a John Mayer fan, but again, I'm not playing, within any league even close to how well he can play. It's just his playing to me is boring. Like it's beautiful, but it's boring. And we already kind of went into that, so I'm doing rambles. So we don't need to recover why I'm not like a big John Mayer fan. But the point is, like, all this hype builds up in the guitar world about these Silver Skies. Like, they're just like really incredible instruments. But again, they're kind of in PRS range. So they're like, you're going to drop like probably $3,000 for one of these, which is insane because it's like, well, at the time you could buy like a Fender Strat, like even maybe on sale you could get like a Fender American Strat for about the same price. But there's a bunch of people who actually are like, you know what, I prefer this to the Fender, which is like insane because Fender is the company that makes and is known for Stratocasters. And the Silver Sky is pretty much just a very modern shape and feel, but trying to get a vintage sound of like a Stratocaster. But they obviously can't call it a Stratocaster for legal reasons because they get sued, right? So anyhow, point being, Scott was saying, I get the feeling you're not a John Mayer fan. Yeah, I'm not. You know what? I'll say this. I don't hate John Mayer. Like if his music was on, I wouldn't be like, ugh. Like it's pleasant sounding. It's just, it's to me like there's oh, now I'm forgetting. I think it was it Aesop Rock? I can't remember which, oh man, it was there was an interview. Scott, you might actually know this. Oh, I don't think it was KRS-One. I can't remember who the interview was with, but it was a classic hip hop guy who's got a lot of respect, and I think Scott might know which guy was asked about what he thought about Drake, and his response was like really classic and kind of went viral, where he was like, Drake makes really good music to go shopping at Target too. He was like, it, because they were like, does he make like legit hip hop? And he was like, well, I mean, it's good for shopping too. Like I could see it in a place where I'm shopping. And I feel like that's kind of the way I feel about John Mayer, where it's like, it's good music to have playing in the background at a Walmart or a Target if I'm like shopping. It wouldn't like bug me. I wouldn't want to leave the store. I wouldn't be like, ugh, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. Gary said, some would say John Mayer is the last real punk. Some being Jim Lujan. Anyhow, the point being, but regardless of how I feel about John Mayer and stuff, I have to admit, the level of, I just wish I could remember the MC who said that. It'll come to me at some point. I'm even visually seeing him in my head, but I'm just not. It's not connecting. I don't think I've named the right guy yet. Anyhow, the thing I will give John Mayer credit for though is apparently, and again, I've never played one of these guitars, but apparently the Silver Sky is like just a killer guitar, like a bunch of people were talking about. But again, price range, really out of the price range of just a standard Stratocaster. So generally, there were a couple especially diehard John Mayer guys were like, yeah, the Silver Sky, this is the Strat killer, and then the rest of people just kept buying Fender Strats and stuff, right? But then, like a couple years later, PRS releases the Silver Sky SE, which is basically their Strat version, like their Squire. It's like the affordable version. So the Silver Sky itself is manufactured in the U.S. at the PRS factory and stuff, but then PRS has a Chinese factory that makes the SE, which is a much more affordable guitar. That starts going around the guitar world, and this is where it gets really fascinating. That is like half the cost. Well, actually, like more like a third to a fourth of the cost of the actual Silver Sky. And people start picking these things up, and they start noticing that these are comparable to like a Mexican-made Fender, like an actual Fender. The quality is like incredible on the necks. The quality control is really good from what I've read and heard about it. And so it's kind of like comparable in feel to a PRS, which is half the appeal people have with a PRS. But then the pickups are like really good, which is impressive for like a overseas manufactured guitar to have pickups that are comparable. Some people even like them better in the main Silver Sky. I'm bringing you guys up to speed with some guitar drama. So anyway, once the SE comes out, you look at like guitar sales charts and stuff, and the SEs are just like blowing up, like they are rivaling Fender, like in sales. In fact, there's a couple months where they're lapping Fender, like they're actually beating Fender in Strat sales. You know, so if you compare like when the Silver Sky SE came out to Fender's Stratocaster sales, it was like beating them, which is insane considering, you know, Fender in the guitar world, Fender and Gibson, they're like they're just like the old staple. They're the old guard. They've been doing guitars better than everyone else, and they've been dominating the sales charts since they came out. And every once in a while, you know, like the 80s is a good example. In the 1980s, when really shreddy guitars were popular, you had brief moments where like Ibanez or Kramer or these kind of like super Strat manufacturers were kind of competing with Fender, but it rarely happens where Fender just like is actually being beaten in sales. Like it's just insane. And for a Strat type guitar that's not a super Strat, it's not like some trend where Strats are out of fashion. It's like no, people want a Strat, but they want the Silver Sky over a Stratocaster. And this really started happening when the PRS SE came out. Like the first, you know, the Silver Sky itself was a revolution when it came out. That I wasn't super interested in it because just it's so out of my league of cost. That if I'm going to drop that kind of money, I'm going to drop it on like a legitimate Fender because I like the sound of Fender, that kind of thing. So if I had that money to throw around, I'd be getting like a really high-end Fender. I just don't see the point in getting a guitar that's mimicking one, right? But at the cost point of it, a Silver Sky SE, now it gets kind of interesting because they're rivaling Fender, and not only that, like they're more affordable than like most Fenders. And so this is where it starts getting interesting. And then Fender also drops the ball a couple years ago, and their entry-level Player Series, you know, I think this was a couple years back, the Player Series just gets like terrible reviews. Like their quality control kind of goes out the window. A lot of people are saying that the Players aren't even playing as good as like the best Squires, which Squire at the same time is getting like better reviews because they put out this thing called Classic Vibe, which is like the really high quality, you know, Squire, which people are saying is rivaling, you know, entry level Fenders as well. So now you have this weird scenario where like the guitar world is, like people are starting to buy Silver Skies over Stratocasters. And then that kind of dies out. And in response, Fender actually starts releasing more solidly manufactured guitars. So it's kind of nice. It's like an example of like, you know, like I was saying about Spectrum. Spectrum kind of sucks because they're a monopoly. Like they don't have to not suck, at least in our area, because for the longest time they were the only internet, right? Now that, you know, there's a fiber optic option in the area, which we just switched to, hopefully that'll force Spectrum to get a little better, right? That's the whole point of like non-monopolies, right? It brings competition. That competition will hopefully make the you know, the big company improve. And that's definitely been the case with Fender and Gibson lately, where they've started really embracing what people loved about the guitars in the first place. Quite often they're making modifications to guitars when people really don't want a modified Fender. They want like a 59 Fender or a 62. Like they want the tone and the sound of the Stratocaster that they grew up hearing, or the Telecaster they grew up hearing, or the in Gibson's case, right? Like Gibson's starting to do reissues and guitars that are kind of going more back to their tradition, rather than trying to like be the new cool thing. Instead, going back to like the thing people love in the first place, which I think a lot of people would say is a net positive in the guitar market. But a lot of that's from pressure from these like these new companies. So anyhow, back to the Silver Sky. So the Silver Sky SE still to me, here's the thing that makes me not want these guitars. Like, first off, the headstock it's not bad. It's just kind of weird. They're pretty, but they're just not my vibe. Like, they just don't fit aesthetically with anything I'm interested in. And then the other thing is, again, they just seem... It just sounds too perfect, like even the Silver Skies and stuff like that. Recently, though... oh, we got to get David on. David Hartman just messaged us. Scott, if you're watching this, about possibly coming on because he's got another comic coming. We got to get David back on. David's always welcome. Anyhow, so the Silver Sky SE, not super interesting, right? But like, okay, they are kind of interesting to me because of the price range. And because of the tone they supposedly can get, because they're saying that these things rival, like, you know, they can really mimic that tone of like a vintage Strat, but with like modern appointments, you know, which is interesting. But I just can't get over the look of them, right? Partially because I don't know why, but the colors they chose for Silver Skies are just like in my opinion, they're like the blandest, least interesting colors of guitars. Now, keep in mind, all of this is opinion, right? Like, guitars are like art supplies, you know, where everybody kind of has their opinions. For me, my favorite kind of guitar colors are going to be like those of like a vintage car. Like, if you think of like classic colors that you'd want like a 57 Chevy to be painted, to me, that's the kind of guitar colors I like. I think partially because a lot of the time in the early history of guitar manufacturing, man, this is a really nerdy guitar stream. If you guys are bored with the guitar thing, let me know. But in the early history of guitars, a lot of the guys that built guitars, like Leo Fender, wasn't even a guitarist. He was an electrician. And here's the weird thing. A lot of people early in guitar manufacturing, from what I remember, I think Martin came from making furniture. A lot of early builders of guitars weren't guitarists. They were like furniture makers, or like electric guitar guys were like, you know, people who messed around with electronics. And so they would kind of work on these things, but when they were manufacturing them, a lot of the manufacturing that's in the history of guitars comes from like car manufacturing. A lot of the early Fenders were actually painted with the same paint and the same, like, you know, nitrocellulose and all of that would be on a car. Like, and so a lot of early vintage guitar colors come from, you know, the paints that you'd see on cars. For, you know, Gibsons and that kind of ilk, a lot of the paints colors that you would see on a Gibson came more from like the that kind of wood treatment came much more from the tradition of, like, you know, older instruments, you know, like violins and stuff like that, and furniture, where it's a lot more like woodworking and staining and toning. Early Fenders were like, they weren't even staining and toning, they were just coloring them, you know, with like basically the same paint that you could get for, you know, your car. And so the car colors that were in trend tended to be the guitar colors that were coming out as well. And then you have the sunbursts and stuff like that, and those are more of like a furniture kind of treatment. Anyhow. Oh, Scott said you may have to book David on your next one. I'm pretty booked out for a while. Yeah, I think he was talking about in September or something, so we'll figure it out. Anyhow, this is all to say The PRS colors, now don't get me wrong, I think the really expensive Silver Skies and stuff, you can get, really interesting colors, but the SEs all felt like bland, like wall colors. Like they didn't feel, the way they're painted just was kind of ugly to me. And again, it's an opinion thing. There's a tone of blue that they sell it in that is actually the same color as my Telecaster. But for some reason, just on that guitar, to me, it doesn't look that good. Flash forward to last night, I saw a review of a guitar called the SENF3, which is kind of like this. It's kind of like the Silver Sky, but here's the thing. It has like a dual humbucker, like a mini humbucker version of single coils. So they're kind of like single coils, but they're kind of like a humbucker, which is interesting because a humbucker is like that double guitar and guitar pickup. And the reason it's called a humbucker, weirdly enough, so if you've ever seen like a Les Paul with those big silver pickups, those are humbuckers, right? They just have like a silver cover on them. But basically, like back in the day when electric guitars first came out, people would complain because they'd be like, hey, if I turn up the volume, right, and I'm not playing my instrument, I hear a hum, right? And you'll hear this in a lot of vintage electric guitars where it's plugged in, and when there's nothing being played, you just hear this And cleverly, when they developed the humbucker, they realized, oh, if we just double, like if we put two pickups right next to each other, right? So it's like two pickups, the signal to noise like cancels out the hum. And so it bucks the hum. So they call it a humbucker. So a humbucker is the one with like two single coils. Like that's what a humbucker looks like. Anyhow, the original Silver Sky is single coils. This one has like these little mini humbuckers, but they're kind of different than a mini humbucker. They look like a hot rail pickup. And here's the catch. One of the guitars is just ugly orange. And I don't know if I've told you guys this, but one of my favorite colors in the world is orange. I absolutely love orange. And I do not have an orange guitar, but one of my favorite amp companies is Orange Amplifiers. They're literally called Orange, and they're big orange amplifiers. But I love orange, and I love like those vintage reds as well, like vintage reds. It's tough because it's like a 286 red. I don't know if that makes sense for those of you who. That's a Pantone, but or Fender red, like the red that it's got. Just it's a little bit red, but it's kind of orangey red, like a very vintage red. I love that. I just love that color.
This is India.
I think 485 was the Pantone color I was thinking of. Is 485 is that like kind of orangey red? It's like a real vintage red. Anyhow, point being, now I'm like half tempted on a Silver Sky. And this is how gas works, right? Because I'm interested in guitars. I like the history. I kind of geek out about it. I'm by no means an expert on it. I just like, it's entertainment for me. But then you'll have this thing where you like know the history of these brands. PRS has never been really interesting to me. It's definitely a different tonal range that I don't usually play, nor would I seek out. The tones are getting better. They're getting closer to the kind of sounds I like. And then they finally release one where I'm like, ooh, that looks pretty nice. And it has great reviews and stuff. Do I need one? No. But this is like, I'm just kind of explaining why this is interesting to me. Hopefully it's interesting to you. I tend to have the belief that if somebody is passionate about something, it generally is going to make interesting content. But I'd have to know on your guys' end. So anyhow, that's what, while I was shading this earlier one, what was occupying my time was listening to people review and evaluate this guitar. Yeah. Now, I know when I was a young artist, I used to get really into like tech tip videos, like, art, partially because pre-internet, I don't think people are aware of this, but like back in the day, man, if you liked a certain style, unless you happen to stumble across like a really good book or interview where somebody mentioned the tools they used, which was pretty rare to stumble across because like we didn't have the internet. So, and again, I guess back in the day I probably could have gone to the oh, now I'm forgetting what that thing was called. It's got a cool name. Do you guys remember? Oh, the microfiche. That's it. I could have gone to like the microfiche at the library, I guess, to like try to find, artists talking about what tools they used. Or you could get an art book, which quite often wouldn't really give you the right tools. But point being, you wouldn't really know what tools artists were using. And so I remember when the internet like started becoming a thing, especially when like Kevin Cross and I like had one of the first art podcasts. It was called Big Illustration Party Time. And back then, like one of the first things we'd ask was to talk shop. Like, because how often do you bump into other illustrators at the time, right? And so we'd have illustrators on and we'd be like, all right, what are your tools? Like, what do you like to use for paper? What kind of quill do you use? What kind of ink do you use? What kind of brush do you use, right? And I still to this day geek out about that, but not as much as those early days. I always like talking about tools and stuff like that. But I would say in my pastime, unless it's a tool I've heard nothing about, and in that case, I'll treat it almost like a guitar where I'll look at like players review it and stuff like that. But in general, I'm pretty familiar with most art materials. So I don't go out of my way, like in entertainment, looking up like videos of people trying out different art tools. Like it's just not on my list of entertainment, especially when I'm working on art. What I do like to listen to is like, but I do feel that way about guitars, like weirdly enough. So maybe it's just that I haven't. I don't know. I wonder why that's so much more interesting with guitars to me than with art supplies. Because again, I like art supplies, but I don't go out of my way to like look up current reviews of art tools, But I'm subscribed to like a ton of guitar channels where they review guitars and stuff. It's a bizarre, interesting thing. Anyhow, what do you guys think? Like, do you like to watch reviews of specific things? Are there products or, DIY kind of things that are really fascinating for you to watch?
Not Steven. This is not a Steven level.
I should mention there's another channel that I recently started watching where a guy forges swords. Like he's like a knife and sword maker. And I don't even own a sword, right? I mean, I'm a guy, and I grew up in the 80s, so I have a soft spot for swords. I think that's a pretty normal thing. That's really fascinating. I've kind of had that playing in the background sometimes when I'm working. I don't know. Do you guys have anything like that where you like want to like listen to somebody forge a sword, or like just an interesting process? I know my sister will watch or have on in the background when she's at home just to kind of relax. She'll have like painting restoration. So it'll be like a guy who works for museums, like restoring like famous paintings. Do you guys have anything like that? I'd love to hear about it. It's kind of like a fascination.
I got past 4 spikes in a slaughterhouse spike button.
I feel like orange really is a great color, though. This is just something I feel a kinship with as a color. I'm pretty excited because this is the last weekend before we're doing the Crestline meetup, and I think that'll be pretty fun. I do think I'll do some live streams from there. By the way, for those of you in chat, let me know, is this connection better than it was the last time? Has there been a lot of like glitching out or like blurriness on the connection? Is my audio coming in okay? All of that? I hope so after that internet thing. I really hope so. Oh, okay. I have a story for you guys. So, I don't know if you guys have like Spectrum in your area. Okay, Scott said it's way better. That's good. That's good. I have a tale of canceling cable. That was like a nightmare, guys. Okay, so we had the fiber optic company comes and installs all the fiber optic stuff, right? They have to like cut it's crazy. It's kind of interesting. They had to cut the sidewalk. Like they had to actually cut like part of our driveway. Like they just cut like these big squares. Gary said there's a big Instagram account of some company that makes ceramic tea sets by traditional methods. So it shows every step from collecting rock to making the pottery to shaping and firing. It's mesmerizing. Yeah, there's something about that. Like even with the sword forging was just kind of interesting, and I think like felt slightly related to like what we do, except I guess a little cooler. Because like when I'm done, I end up with a comic book. When they're done, they end up with a sword, which is, I think, arguably a lot cooler than a single comic. you know, um, just on its face, like if you're like I worked all day and I have a long sword, versus if you're like I worked all day and I finished another comic page. I mean, I feel like the guy with the sword kind of wins in the cool factor. But anyhow, the thing that was fascinating about watching it is really was that like it was the different firing and different processes and the milling and all of this like just crazy like manual labor, and then like tooling, ivory or like stone to make like a the handle and stuff. It's really interesting, like the folding of the steel, like where they have to fold it like multiple times and then fire it, and it's like all to this point where at any point it can go wrong and just you're gonna have to redo it, which to me is like it does seem like forging and stuff seems a little. Yeah, but it's also like really cool to see. It's just like the flames and stuff are it's just a very interesting, relaxing process. It is mesmerizing. So anyhow, Gary, I'm imagining making China or any sort of manufacturing, but art is probably interesting. Like those real physical arts, like that is really relaxing. Anyhow, so we have the fiber optic, internet company. Obviously, we're going to have them set up our internet before I cancel with Spectrum. And so we have them in. They set it up. They have to like drill a hole in the house, like all sorts of crazy stuff, because it's for fiber optic. They have to get the cables to run to the house. And And so we get all that done, and I'm like, cool, I'll just cancel Spectrum. You guys, the thing about monopolies, okay, is they're not used to people leaving, and they build their models to make it like the most difficult thing possible to leave. That was insane. Like, just the process of canceling it was wild. I don't understand how a business can do that. Like, it's insane. Like, how they can make it so hard to just be like, yeah, I kind of want to stop paying for this. We're good. Like, can we cancel the thing? The fact that took hours upon hours was just nuts. Like, they have their system all built to like try to make it such a pain that most people would just give up and just keep paying, just for the hassle. Have you guys ever experienced that with like canceling cable? It was insane. I probably experienced it in the past or something and just forgot how like nuts. Like, I don't understand how legally they're okay to do that, because I feel like, if you had a subscription to eat at a restaurant, or like a membership to eat at a restaurant or something, you're like, I'm going to cancel my membership. I can't imagine that taking, half a day to do. It was just insane that like that's how it's set up. I'll give an example just of how insane it is. So, originally I set up the account, right? And then my wife's name is on the account. And I called to say, hey, okay, we had, fiber optic set up in our house. You guys don't offer fiber optic. So, it's much faster. We want to cancel. Like, we already got it set up. We already paid for the other provider. So we're just canceling our service, right? And we'll return, the modem or whatever it is you need. So we do that. We call in, say, hey, can I cancel my thing? And they're like, sure. Who am I speaking with? And I say my name, and they're like, yeah, actually we can't cancel this because, and they say, like, even though it's not, they say that the account's under my wife's name. So then they're like, yeah, we can't do anything without her approval. And I'm like, well, and they almost expect me to just like hang up and stuff. But I'm like, well, I mean, she's here, so can she do it? And they seem like really stun locked by that. So it's like a 10-minute, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I mean, she's in the room. This is the phone you have under the account. Can I have you speak with her? And they're like, finally, after like 10 minutes, right? They're like, yeah. Okay, fine. And then they speak with her, and they're like, cool, okay, where's your address, all this stuff. We go through a process for like a half an hour, and then they go, okay, and what is your PIN number? And it's like, I will tell you, we have never set up a PIN number with this company, ever. Like, they've never required one. We've never set it up. So we're like, yeah, we don't have a PIN. And they're like, well, I'm sorry, then you can't cancel. And I'm like, well, that can't be legal. Like, I mean, what do I do if I forgot my PIN? And they're like, okay, go to the website, right? They guide us to the website, right? We set up at the website, right? So it's like, and they're on the phone. By the way, at this point, we're about an hour and a half in, right? We go to the website, we navigate to this like hidden page that, they make really hard to find. And it's like, if you need your PIN number, we'll email it to you. Or not, we'll email it to you. We'll give you a call and tell you your PIN number if you click this thing. So we click it, and we're on the phone with the guy, and he's like, it's okay if you put me on hold when they call. And it's like, it never calls. And I look at the number they have on there, and it's my number, right? But it's just a dead link on their site. And they're like, well, I'm sorry, there's just nothing we can do. And at this point, we're at like 2 hours, right? anyhow, I don't want to complain, but my point is the whole thing is designed to take eternity and make it such a pain to quit. You know, that like, you know, maybe people just kind of give up and go, you know what, forget it. I'm going to just stay with this company because it's too much of a hassle to leave. I don't understand how that's legal. I just think that's insane. I don't know. How can people, I don't know. I find that really bizarre. I understand giving a little bit of pushback or just trying to get a little bit of information if you have a customer leaving. You don't want to just be like, oh, okay, well, you know, good luck to you, right? I understand there's some need to like try to hang on to a customer or say like, oh, are you unhappy? Like, what can we change? That kind of stuff. I get that. And I don't even mind that, right? Like that's reasonable. That's pretty decent business, right? You don't want to just be like, well, okay, sir, have fun, you know. But the hard sale, when you're like, you've gone through all that and they still just manufacture like a maze that you have to, you know, travel through. Scott had put it really well. He said 1 click to sign up and half a day to quit. Yeah, Gary was saying based on these, I escalate and escalate. Yeah, I do too. And to be honest, I just, I become a jerk. Like, I don't become like a jerk, like a mean, horrible person or anything. But like, I remember even in the call, like the 4th person we had to speak to after hours on it, you know, I was speaking with somebody and they're like, well, why did you leave? And I'm like, I would like to cancel my service. And they're like, well, what was the reason? And I'm like, I don't really want to get into it. I want to cancel my service. And then they just keep like, well, how can I delay this more? And I'm like, I just want to cancel my service. And finally, you know, they're like, well, sir, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, can you transfer me to somebody who can cancel my service? And they're like, well, I can cancel my service. And I'm like, okay, well, I've asked you 8 times to cancel my service. So could you cancel my service? And finally they do, you know, so, but yes, I tend to escalate or just kind of become a pain in the butt. But yeah, it was a wild experience. I'm sorry to those of you out there, when you have to. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if it'll be any different with our new internet company. I think that might just be kind of more of the same, but I do feel like, especially with companies that have kind of been the big dog where there's been no other option, I think they do kind of get that even worse, you know, where it's like, if it's like the only, a good example would be like, let's say you own the train, right? Like, if you're the guy who owns the train and everybody's traveling by train and suddenly there's like competition, like maybe a bus comes along or something, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna cancel my train pass. I'm good. The attitude that monopolies have when when they're used to kind of getting their way is wild to me. All right, guys, we're at an hour. I'm glad the connection's working better. I'm gonna play some music previews of what I recorded this morning, and then where the latest album is at. So I'm gonna play that in a second. But I need to get some water so that I can finish up this page or get a little further on it. I'm gonna try to go for another 30 minutes. At minimum. If you guys want to assure that I go for an extra hour, feel free to super chat. I'm trying to hit that goal of 5 super chats in an hour. I think we missed it, but if we can get some super chats, that'd be helpful. And I will be right back. I'm gonna put the where is it? Okay, I'm gonna play the Kemble files, which is the latest break video. If you guys are watchers of this stream and you want to promote your own stuff, all you have to do is submit a video that mentions either Jacob's Apartment or 2 Stories, and it can mention your stuff and promote your stuff as well. I try to keep it from a minute to about 2 minutes. And it, you know, it will probably make the cut and be played. It's free advertising. So, anyhow, that being said, here is Jim Lujan's The Crumble Files, which made my day, that Jim submitted a week or so ago. And I'll be right back.
Well, Mr. Stryker, I have you now. There is no escape. You will tell me where the Kemble files are, or you will die beneath the crushing electric arms of my shocktopus.
I hear you chirping, little birdie, but JT Stryker ain't no stool pigeon.
Very well. You have left me no choice. Bring out the doctor. Say hello to Dr. Hodges. I'm sure you're familiar with the doctor and his work.
If by work you mean the murder and torture of innocents, yeah, I'm familiar.
I've waited a long time for this moment, Stryker, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it.
That's what your mother said.
Well, that's a horrible thing to say. You don't even know my mother.
Don't let him interrupt you. Come on, man.
Look, fellas, we can tango here all night, but it doesn't change a thing. You're never getting the Kemble files.
Oh, I beg to differ, Stryker. I have certain negotiation methods.
Your mom has negotiation methods.
Stop it. That didn't even make sense. That's not even... It's not applicable.
Listen up, compadres, and listen good. Option 1, I'm giving you 2 bozos and out. You untie me, I walk out of here, and everybody goes home happy. Option 2, I kill everyone in this room and then...
You idiot! You killed him!
I felt triggered. I've been learning to stand up to bullies. I just read 2 stories. Joshua Kemble's raw, introspective graphic novel chronicling mental health, faith, and the struggle for redemption. I also read Jacob's Apartment, a coming-of-age graphic novel about faith, love, and post-college existential drama. They've changed my life choices.
I'm sorry. I had no idea. I too am a fan of the books of the Joshua Kemble. But I'm still going to have to kill you.
Kill me with kindness?
All right, guys, welcome back. We're doing a live stream where I'm working on page... What is the page I'm working on? Page 157 of Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. It's a Saturday. It's hopefully a productive Saturday. And we just watched a break video, and I got some water. So I'm going to have a little bit of water for a second. If you hear noises in the background, it's my son shooting a toy gun, which is pretty awesome. And we're just kind of working our way through this page, so let's get back to it. Hopefully, I'd love to hear what you guys are working on as well. All right, here we go. I don't know if I've told you guys, I don't tend to have like wildly vivid dreams that stand out to me, and for some reason the last year I've been having like much more prominent dreams, and I had a really strange one today where for some reason there was like a religious sect that was looking for a person with a really small head, like head on their shoulders, like pin small, like the dude from Beetlejuice, kind of like. Anyhow, so I remember like in this dream for some reason I'm like working at a shop. Maybe the shop part came from like, the welding videos that the forging videos or something. anyhow, so I'm working at this shop. I'm like a blacksmith kind of guy or something. And there's a man who comes in, an elderly gentleman, and his son. Like, keep in mind, it's like it for some reason in this dream world, it's just very known that this religious figure with the extremely small head, like, you know, we're talking like pin-sized skull on their shoulders, right? Is being like sought out, and it's for some like important religious reason. I don't know why, right? But it's like it's you know, it's like the chosen one, the prophet or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. And so this man walks into the shop and like orders something, probably a sword. I'm probably dreaming about swords from this stupid sword video. Because another thing is, for some reason yesterday, I went to bed at like a regular time, and I got hit with this thing that I think hits a lot of creatives. I don't know if you guys get this, but it was like creative insomnia, where it's like, I know I need to sleep, but my brain is wandering like wildly about recording music, about the comic, about, you know, the upcoming school year and the week I've got ahead of me, and my brain just would not shut off. Like, my body was exhausted, but like my brain was just continually thinking. And I think this overthinking thing is pretty common, especially when you're in a creative flow. Like, I'm in a flow state on this book, and so like creatively, like, I haven't really been hitting any blocks or anything like that. It's actually hard for me to stop working on in the last few days. It's just been like flowing, you know, which is the state you kind of want to be in as a creative, except when you're like me and it's like I gotta get some rest to Gary said he's working to finish one and start page 42. Are you gonna be done? Are you actually gonna be finished? I can't imagine. Are you actually gonna be finished by the time we have the crest line thing? I can't remember, but I feel like that's not too far off from the page count, Gary, that you got to hit. How long is this story? Now that I think about it, though, it's probably in like the 70s range. I can't remember. You got to tell me where you're at, Gary. Like, how close is that to the finish line? Anyhow, so that was an alarm for something. I can't remember what. So anyhow, this dream is wild because last night I couldn't sleep, so and I knew I needed to sleep, so I tried something different. I rarely am one of those people, like, I never fall asleep to like movies or podcasts or anything like that. But I just was like, I couldn't get my brain to stop thinking. We have relatives visiting and stuff. So the living room, somebody was already sleeping out in the living room. And I was like, okay, so I can't chill in the living room and work. And aside from that, if I do that, I'm going to be like destroyed for the day. Like, I won't be functional during the day. And I got to get my, you know, sleep habits kind of more in order for the upcoming year. Anyhow, so long story short, I think I ended up putting on one of those like forging videos while I'm falling asleep, right? So that probably did affect this dream. But anyhow, I don't know what the pin-sized head thing is. It's kind of funny. Okay. Gary was saying the book is 58 pages. So at the retreat, he's going to be working on concepts for the next. You can see why, because like you're pretty far. Chris said falling asleep will invade your dreams to things. Anyhow, so this was a wild dream. So anyhow, this guy comes into a shop, right? Older gentleman. Keep in mind, this is like a forge that I'm working at, but I have no idea why. Like, dreams are so weird, right? Because it's not like in the medieval era or something. Like, that would be pretty cool if I was like a blacksmith in like a D&D campaign or something. But no, it's almost like an Arby's, you know, like just like a fast food joint. but for some reason it's like forging. And I don't even know what we're forging, right? But anyhow, guy comes in and his son comes in with him, and his son has like his skull is like the size of like a pin. Like it's tiny. It's like if you imagine that guy with the really small head and giant shoulders from Beetlejuice, it's like that except like times 10, right? And I'm like all excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the guy. It's the guy that the religious sect or whatever has been like looking for. And he's right here in my shop. Like, and I think there's a reward too for like, so I'm like, oh my gosh, your son has like a really small head. And then, and then like, so this is the weirdest dream. I'm telling you, I think, like, again, for you guys, maybe talking about dreams is kind of like, I have them all the time. I don't have vivid dreams all the time. This last year, I've been having them more and more, which is really kind of fascinating to me. You know, especially considering I've had, you know, comics with a lot of dream sequences. Like Jacob's Apartment has a lot of really vivid dreams in it, right? But you know, I'm not a guy who has like crazy memorable dreams. So anyhow, I have this crazy dream, and then like the guy gets like the dad gets like really upset, like really like livid. He's like, "How dare you insult my son?" Like he doesn't know about like the prophecy or anything like that, and so he's just like super upset, and it's like this. It almost becomes like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, right? Where it just becomes like awkward, where I'm just like, no, like I'm not trying to say that he's like bad looking or anything like that. I'm just saying there's like this prophecy, and the guy's like, whatever, I'm so offended. Can I speak to your manager? And it's like this whole thing, like it blows out of proportion. And so he calls my manager, and then my manager comes out. And it's like I don't know if this is like subconscious like storing of just bad retail jobs I used to have to work when I was like early 20s and late teens, but it's like it's that manager, you know, like a manager I haven't had to deal with since I was, you know, 19 or something. It was just like, "I'm so sorry, sir." And the manager's like, "What were you thinking?" And I'm like, "But it's like everybody knows about this like prophecy looking for the guy with like the really small like, you know, skull, like it's and like, and the manager's like, even as I'm explaining it, like very Curb Your Enthusiasm-ish, he's just like, yeah, now you're just digging a hole worse, it's just getting worse. And I'm like, no, it's it's like I'm in the middle of this like big debate about like, no, like I'm not biased against like people because of their skull size, and it's like this whole thing. And then finally my wife like wakes me up and is like, you know, we have Baba staying with us, who's Benji's grandma, right, my mother-in-law. And she wakes me up and she's like, you know, Baba made French toast. You should wake up. And I'm like, oh, sweet. But I'm in the middle of this argument in my head. So I think while I'm half asleep, I'm just like telling her like, his head really wasn't that small. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, I just felt so defensive. I was like really excited for the guy. I was like, oh, it's that guy. It's the chosen guy. And then his dad and him were just like, I dare say, like I've never. It was so funny. Anyhow, that was it. Just felt really intense. And recapping it, even when I was like, still in that like kind of half awake dream state, I'm like recapping it to my wife, and she's just looking at me like, you are a lunatic, dude. Because it's like when you get woken up during that, you know, that specific part where it's like it's kind of you're still feeling the intensity, so it's like I felt really defensive. Like I gotta explain this this behavior that I had at the store. So anyhow, that was a weird one. I don't know. Have you guys had any weird dreams lately? Anyhow, being a guy who doesn't have vivid dreams a lot, I was just surprised at, like it's been interesting this last like few months or whatever, having like really vivid dreams. Because I'm like, is this just kind of how everybody is when they're asleep? Like, are most people like having these like wildly strange dreams that kind of stick with you? And like, to me, the funny thing about it is it's not that strange of a dream. It's just kind of weird, like a lot of dreams are, right? But the funniest part of it was when I'm still in the dream state where the logic all just seems coherent and makes sense. And then I'm making the case to my wife about like, no, I was treating this guy fine because like there's the prophecy. And like she's like looking at me like doing the kind of like, like, sure. And then as I'm explaining it, I start realizing like how like just absurd what I was dreaming was. I feel like Jesse Reclaw used to do that like slow wave comic online, and he was really good at capturing that, just like the absurdity of dreams, where you just kind of buy the absurd is just perfectly rational. It makes me wonder if like when you meet somebody who's like super irrational, we've all had those moments, like a good example is like, we've watched those debates on stream sometimes. I feel like we should watch one again because they're really funny. Am I frozen? It does look like I froze, but I don't know if that's the case. Yeah, like when we've watched like flat Earth debates on here. And you watch like these people who have like just complete like, they all have like a logic tree, right? Where it's like if you were to go into a conversation, I've had this happen too, right? If you've ever talked to like conspiracy theorists, tend to have like their logic tree like memorized, like they know exactly their defense, right? And it's like if you don't go into those conversations like really well equipped, it can almost make you think that the person knows what they're talking about. Like they've rationalized absurdity and irrational things to the point where it's like it like the thing I was talking about with guitars, right? They're like that, but with their conspiracy, right? Like where it's like they know the history and the reasons and like the brands and like the drama and all of that stuff, because they're like crazy interested in something I have no interest in because I accepted the Earth as being round, like when I saw the proof of it at a very young age, to the point where it's just so insane to think that there's somebody who's convinced themselves that that's not the case. Anyhow, it's funny because it's like I wonder sometimes if maybe those people just dream a lot, and because dream rationale is like kind of like that, right? Where in a dream, if like the whole world is just like, yep, the world is flat, you're just like, well, I guess the world's flat now. Like there's not a lot of like, wow, that's weird. It's like you just kind of accept the reality you're given. Or in dreams sometimes, like one of the fascinating things to me that I still find really interesting is how you can know somebody is the person they are, even though they look nothing like the person, So like you'll have a dream where like a cat's talking to you or something, and it's like, oh, that's totally, Bob down the street or whatever. You just like your brain will just tell you that's like who, like the identifiers that we rely on in just regular times. We naturally just accept like, oh, well, those are wiggly, like reality just completely distorting is not all that strange when you're dreaming. And that's always fascinating to me. Gary was saying he's going to be done drawing the current book sometime in November. That's cool. And then Chris said it's fascinating how your brain is both writing and watching the story while you're asleep. That is true. Anyhow, I just find that very interesting. We are finishing up our shading, which is cool. and I'm thinking like basically I am thinking about probably streaming till I finish this shading. Now I might stream longer, but I might need to kind of get lunch. I find that I do that sometimes. Like I'll set up an art stream and be like, sweet, you know. And I do want to, generally on an art stream, I don't want to make it any shorter than like 2 hours, you know. I do like doing really long ones. But sometimes I'll tend to like be like ready to work and rock. Maybe this is Resistance, where I'll be ready to rock, like everything's all set up. And then as I'm like setting up, once I'm set up, I'm like, oh yeah, eating's good. Like, I don't know. Do you guys ever find that? Like you'll get all set up and in your zone and then be like, oh yeah, life stuff. I got to do that. Anyhow, I find that like tends to happen, especially on Saturdays. But we'll see how long we can kind of go. I was going to play sneak previews, so let's do that. Let's do a sneak preview. This should not be overlapping where it is, so I'm going to fix that. Did I flatten the outline? Oh no. That's not good. Let me see if I have a different layer, because it looks like I flattened something I shouldn't have, which is always fixable. But let's see if 157. What I need to get to is a 187 at some point, a page 187. Chris said, anyone planning on going to LA Comic-Con? I think I'm going to pass this year. Oh, let's cancel that. I think I'm going to pass this year on Comic-Cons because I got to get the book done. So I think I'm going to pass. But I think that there's probably a high likelihood that who usually goes to LA Comic-Con? I think you're probably going to see Keith there, I would imagine. Oh, that's... Well... Okay, so that is bad. I flattened a layer that shouldn't be flattened, so I'll have to adjust that in a second. Maybe we'll do that while I play the music previews. But I do think Scott, Campbell, and Keith will most likely be there. I think they usually do LA Comic-Con. Okay, we're going to merge visibles here. Okay, so let's play some music. I'm going to play what I recorded this morning. There's no vocals to it yet, but it's kind of fun to just share. So this is what I was working on when I woke up, just to kind of get in a creative zone. So let's play it. Let me make sure the volume's up on it too. Okay, I'm going to play it, and you guys can check it out. Here it is. let's see here. Let me pause that. So that's what I recorded this morning. I like it. I'm not sure where I'll go vocally with it, but I like it. It's jammy, you know. But yeah, so that was. Let me see. What did I track that with? So I used my Sterling by Music Man bass, and then my let's see, what did I use for guitar? My Schecter Damien for guitar, which is like a 7-string, and then I used a drum machine. Yeah, that's basically it. And then like an old school like synth drum machine too, layered on top of that just to give it a little bit of vibe. But yeah, that was a fun one to track this morning. So that was some jammy jams. We're gonna kind of finish up this this background here, and then I think we might call it for the stream, which is pretty exciting. How are you guys doing? I'm liking this page. It's an interesting page because it's like getting a letter, basically. Sophie is getting a letter from Robert. And that's pretty awesome. Okay, so Weird Dreams, some guitar talk. Played you guys a little preview of that. I'll play you one other track that I have not played yet. So I'm playing a couple little sneak previews. This was the second song. I started this like 6 months ago, and then I sat and didn't work on any solo work for a long time, and I finally finished tracking the vocals on this. None of these are mastered yet. So this would be the second song.
The soil above until the sun sets on us all, carried over shoulders laden with the weight of the container. Side fossils and relics will strive to read. Who's honest on the soil above until the sun sets on us all. History, it repeats. History repeats. Side fossils and relics will strive to read. Who's honest on the soil above until the sun sets on us all. Buried under soil and dirt so deep it's looking excavated. Forgotten bones and souls that feed the worms and flowers. Who's honest on the soil above until the sun sets on us all. History, it repeats. History repeats.
All right, so that's track 2. And then I'm going to play one more sneak peek. If any of this music's interesting to you guys too, I have a bunch of albums on Spotify under Joshua Kemble. And then there's also my latest album with my band No Saboteurs called The Sun Eventually Sets on everything. That's also available. But these are sneak previews of just the next solo album, some of the stuff I've been cooking up. I can't wait to share with you guys the stuff No Saboteurs is working on. It's pretty exciting. We're making pretty good progress. I think right now, probably tomorrow, we'll be working on finishing up the second track. We already have one track down. And generally, we want to do about 10 tracks per album at minimum. And where we're heading is really cool. For my birthday, ended up getting a gift certificate for Amazon, and I ended up buying a really cheap mandolin, and we already used that to track one of the songs, and it's pretty cool. So it's got some mandolin and like some really interesting stuff like xylophone and other stuff like that. Right now, what I'm working on, I'll go ahead and play track 1. From my solo thing. These may not be the order that the final album's in, but these are the 3 that I have so far for the next solo album. So here is track 1, I think.
Out of millions of people, we're a dot in the data. The landscape is filled with populations and stratas. But you're more than number 2. Best of compilation on an album, yeah, mix of all the best songs that were written out of millions of people. I'm a dot in the data. In fact, you found me among them, makes me feel like it matters. Fractal pattern. Then we're 1 in a million, in constellations, an army full of civilians. Yeah, we're more than a number collectively. We are the best of compilation on an album, yeah, mix all the best songs that were written out of millions of people. I'm a dot in the data. In fact, you found me among them, makes me feel like it matters. Don't wanna go it alone. Don't wanna go it
right, so that was the third song that I have, and that's as far as I've gotten on the new kind of album or whatever, the new solo one. So I'm pretty inspired. I think it's funny. I was like on a tear for a little bit there, where I was just putting out like album after album because I just got really inspired and was kind of keeping with this like daily habit. And then like the last few months, I think partially from just like buckling down and like working really hard on this comic, I like kind of let that slide. And so I'm kind of glad to break back into it, because I do feel like that's a gateway I don't want to close. Like I think that when you're working on art, you kind of stay if you're like me, you stay consistent or it just doesn't happen. And so for me, like being able to get back into it and like start tracking stuff again, even if like no one's listening to it, it's like I want to make songs. I enjoy making songs. It's something I'm pretty good at, and I like doing. And so like I feel like, but it you know, if you don't keep that going, like it's kind of like comics. It's like, you know, if you let it go too long before you work on the next one and stuff, you like kind of lose that momentum, and then it takes forever to do. And I feel like the best place to be as an artist is that place where it's familiar, you have your space set up, all you need is the time, you know? And I feel like with music, I got to that place, and then today was nice because it's like opening that up again and remembering that that's important, you know, was good. And a lot of the signal for that was the guitar acquisition syndrome, right? Like I feel like if I'm having the desire to like get a guitar, it's probably just that I need to work on music. Not so much that I need to get another guitar, you know. And I definitely feel like that that was the case. And I'm with allergies. That's not fun. Let's do... So, by the way, if you guys are like, what the heck are you doing? I accidentally merged my borders with my line art. So I've made a layer where I'm copying my line art, and then I'm redoing the borders because I'm going to need those, and that'll speed up my coloring process. Yeah. The only downside is I forgot to include the word balloons, so I'm going to have to copy those. Scott was saying, keep it up, you'll have a catalog comparable to Prince. Maybe a lot of songs, but no, there's no way. Prince is like one of the best songwriters of all time, but maybe number wise. I don't know. Have you guys seen the clip of him playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps? I think it's at like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's one of those things where Prince, like for some reason, people just don't know, or I mean I know like people in the know, but it's like one of those things a lot of people don't know about Prince is that he was one of the best guitarists ever. Like he was a phenomenal guitarist. And I think a lot of people, because of his songwriting and his pop and stuff, forget that, like, that, or aren't even aware of like what a killer guitarist Prince is. But anyhow, so even I'll forget sometimes, like, because he's such an interesting songwriter. I'll forget that like what he's doing on guitar, he makes it sound real easy, but guy was a killer guitarist. So anyhow, I'm sure I've probably talked about this on stream before, but like there's just this legendary clip on YouTube of him playing at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame While My Guitar Gently Weeps with like all these killer guitarists, like just infamously famous guitarists. And Prince gets up there and plays a solo. He's like late, I think. I believe from what I've heard about it that because he's running a little late, a studio musician kind of fills in his place. Like he's like, there's like a guy who's just like a studio musician to do backup guitars, and he starts like shredding, right? Let's see here. On like the main solo, like, so there's a part of the song that's like meant for a solo, right? And that guy just shreds. And when Prince arrives, like Prince just kind of, instead of taking over the solo, just tells the guy like, no, like visually kind of signals the guy like, no, you go ahead, you take the solo area. And so the guy's just having fun wailing and shredding. And this is after all these different guitarists have like shredded at their parts. And then toward the end, Prince basically plays like a lead that is so impressive that like everybody on the stage, their mind is just blown. And it's not even in the key lead spot, but it's like one of the most beautiful leads you'll ever hear. And then he proceeds to just throw his guitar into the audience and leave. And it's like, it's one of those moments of like him just like flexing his muscles as a lead guitarist. And it's just unbelievable. Let's see here. Let's see. So let's do Borders. Yeah. Yeah, Scott clarified in a good way. He said, quantity, not quality compared to Prince. No offense. No offense taken, man. Yeah. Anyway, Prince is amazing. Anybody who doesn't like Prince is a fool. A fool, I tell you. I kind of get it because I think when I was younger, you know, some Prince was really interesting to me, and then some of it wasn't. It was only like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago where I really started like revisiting Prince and realizing like how like genius all of that music is. And it's like unique, and it was like defining a sound that just really didn't exist before him. But now I love the heck out of Prince. Like it's good stuff. Okay. Guys, we're set. We did all our shading. We're going to call it for the stream. I will probably be streaming maybe later today when I color. But right now I'm going to go eat some lunch. And I'm an old man too, so I might nap. Who knows? We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks to everybody who watched this. If you haven't yet, hit that like button. That helps cheat the algorithm. Hit the bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live, and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't. Usually we're going to be making art and comics on this channel, and thanks to Scott and Chris and Gary and everybody else who showed up in the chat. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye. Oh, also, thumbs up for the new internet, right? Like I think it went a lot smoother. It didn't lag. We aren't fuzzy. We're nice and crystal clear. And look at this beautiful new, like, it looks all professional. I actually have like a border and stuff now. So anyhow, I'll see you guys on the next one. Appreciate you, and I will see you then. Bye, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's live stream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects.
This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream.